What if I told you that the most powerful weapon you possess is the one you've been trained never to use? In a world that screams, begs, chases, and constantly explains itself, there exists an ancient power so devastating that it can bring the strongest person to their knees without you saying a single word. This weapon doesn't require money, status, or connections. It doesn't need violence, manipulation, or games. It's been hiding inside you all along, waiting to be unleashed. Most people today are living in a state of constant desperation. They chase approval like addicts chasing their next fix. They beg for attention, love, respect, and validation from people who wouldn't cross the street to help them. They over-explain every decision, every action, every thought, as if their entire existence depends on others' understanding and approving of their choices. And then they wonder why they feel weak, why people don't respect them, why they attract toxic relationships and mediocre opportunities. The brutal truth is this: when you chase, you repel. When you beg, you diminish. When you over-explain, you weaken your position. But when you master the art of strategic silence, when you learn to never chase, never beg, and never explain, you become a force of nature that others cannot ignore, cannot control, and cannot resist. The ancient Stoics understood this power 2,000 years before modern psychology caught up. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." Epictetus, who transformed from slave to sage, taught that true freedom comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting nothing from others. Seneca, advisor to emperors, knew that silence holds more power than 1,000 words spoken in desperation. Today, I'm going to reveal why these three principles, never chase, never beg, never explain, will transform you from someone who seeks power to someone who embodies it. This isn't about playing games or manipulating people. This is about reclaiming your personal power and learning to operate from a position of strength rather than weakness. But I must warn you, once you understand and apply these principles, your relationships will change, your opportunities will shift, and some people will no longer recognize who you've become. Before we dive into this transformation, I need you to understand that this isn't entertainment. This is evolution. If you're ready to stop being at the mercy of others' opinions and start commanding respect through your presence alone, like this video right now, drop a comment when something hits you hard. Share this with someone who needs to reclaim their power. And most importantly, prepare to let go of the desperate behaviors that have been sabotaging your life. The first principle that will revolutionize your entire existence is this: never chase anything or anyone. This goes against everything modern society has taught you about getting what you want. We've been programmed to believe that if we want something badly enough, we should pursue it relentlessly, convince others of our worth, and never give up. But the Stoics discovered something that will shatter this illusion forever. The moment you start chasing is the moment you lose your power. Think about the most attractive, successful, and respected people you know. Do they chase opportunities, or do opportunities chase them? Do they beg for relationships, or do people compete for their attention? Do they desperately try to convince others of their value, or do others naturally recognize their worth? The pattern is undeniable. Powerful people don't chase because they understand that chasing communicates desperation, and desperation is the opposite of attraction. When you chase someone for love, you're telling them that you believe they're more valuable than you are. When you chase a job opportunity, you're positioning yourself as the beggar rather than the prize. When you chase friendships or social acceptance, you're communicating that you need them more than they need you. And here's the brutal reality: people don't value what comes to them easily, and they certainly don't respect what begs for their attention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." This wasn't just about mindfulness. It was about understanding that your power exists in the present moment, not in some future where you've successfully chased down what you think you need. When you're present, grounded, and self-contained, you become magnetic. People are drawn to those who are complete within themselves, not to those who are desperately seeking completion from others. The Stoic approach to getting what you want is counterintuitive but devastatingly effective. Instead of chasing, you become worthy of being chased. Instead of pursuing, you become worth pursuing. You develop your skills, your character, your presence, and your value to such a degree that others naturally gravitate toward you. This doesn't mean you become passive or lazy. It means you invest your energy in building yourself rather than convincing others. But here's where this principle becomes truly powerful. When you stop chasing, you force others to reveal their true intentions. The people who only wanted you when you were chasing them will disappear, revealing that they were never worth your pursuit. The opportunities that only materialized when you begged for them weren't real opportunities. The relationships that required you to constantly prove your worth weren't real relationships. Your refusal to chase becomes a filter that separates the authentic from the artificial. The second principle that will transform how others perceive and treat you is this: never beg for anything from anyone. This principle cuts deeper than most people are comfortable admitting because it exposes how much of our daily behavior is actually sophisticated begging. We beg for attention through social media posts designed to get reactions. We beg for love by constantly accommodating others at our own expense. We beg for respect by over-explaining our qualifications and achievements. We beg for opportunities by diminishing ourselves and inflating others. Epictetus, who knew real powerlessness as a slave, understood something that most free people never grasp. The moment you beg for something from someone else is the moment you make them your master. He wrote, "No one can hurt you without your permission." But what he understood, and what most people miss, is that begging is giving someone permission to hurt you by placing your well-being in their hands. When you beg for love, you're teaching people that your emotional state depends on their actions. When you beg for opportunities, you're positioning yourself as inferior to those who have what you want. When you beg for forgiveness, respect, or understanding, you're giving others the power to grant or deny your peace of mind. This is not strength. This is voluntary slavery. The Stoic alternative to begging is self-reliance and detached engagement. You engage with people and opportunities from a position of strength, offering value rather than seeking it. You love without needing love in return. You respect others without requiring their respect for your self-worth. You pursue goals for their own merit rather than for external validation. This doesn't make you cold or uncaring. It makes you powerful. Consider the difference between these two approaches. The beggar says, "Please give me a chance. I really need this opportunity." The Stoic says, "I believe I can add significant value to this situation." The beggar says, "I'm sorry, please don't leave me." The Stoic says, "I understand your decision and I wish you well." The beggar diminishes themselves to elevate others. The Stoic maintains their dignity while respecting others' autonomy. When you stop begging, something remarkable happens. People start taking you seriously. They can't manipulate you with the promise of giving you what you want because you're not desperately wanting anything from them. They can't control you through the threat of withholding their approval because your approval of yourself is sufficient. They can't break you by rejecting you because your worth isn't dependent on their acceptance. But perhaps most importantly, when you stop begging, you start attracting people and opportunities that recognize your value without needing to be convinced. The right relationships, the right opportunities, and the right experiences come to those who don't desperately need them, but would appreciate them. This is the paradox of power. The less you need from others, the more others want to give you. The third principle that will make you untouchable is this: never explain yourself unless absolutely necessary. We live in a culture obsessed with explanations, justifications, and getting others to understand our perspectives. We explain our decisions, our feelings, our actions, our thoughts, as if our entire existence requires approval from an invisible jury. But the Stoics understood something that modern psychology is just beginning to grasp. Over-explanation is a sign of weakness, and silence is often more powerful than words. When you constantly explain yourself, you're communicating several dangerous messages. First, you're suggesting that your decisions are questionable and require external validation. Second, you're giving others the power to judge whether your explanations are sufficient. Third, you're training people to expect justifications from you, which puts you in a perpetually defensive position. And fourth, you're wasting precious energy trying to control how others perceive you instead of focusing on your own growth and goals. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids, who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself. This emperor understood that explaining your actions to others often creates more problems than it solves. Most people aren't asking for explanations because they genuinely want to understand. They're asking because they want to judge, control, or feel superior. The power of not explaining yourself lies in the mystery and respect it creates. When you make a decision and simply act on it without justifying it to everyone around you, you demonstrate confidence in your judgment. When someone questions your choices and you respond with calm silence or a simple acknowledgement without explanation, you force them to respect your autonomy. When you refuse to defend your lifestyle, decisions, or values to people who haven't earned the right to judge them, you maintain your personal power. But this principle goes deeper than just avoiding over-explanation. It's about understanding that you don't owe anyone access to your inner world, your reasoning process, or your personal business. Your thoughts, your motivations, your struggles, and your dreams are yours to share or keep private as you choose. When you stop feeling obligated to explain yourself, you reclaim sovereignty over your inner life. Seneca practiced this principle by carefully choosing when and with whom to share his thoughts. He understood that pearls cast before swine are wasted pearls. Your explanations, your vulnerabilities, and your inner truth are precious resources that should be shared strategically with people who have earned that level of access to your life. Consider how different your life would be if you stopped explaining your decisions to people who are unaffected by them, stopped justifying your lifestyle to people who don't pay your bills, stopped defending your choices to people who wouldn't support you anyway, and stopped trying to make everyone understand your perspective when understanding isn't required for you to live your life. The silence that comes from not explaining yourself isn't empty. It's full of power. It communicates that you're secure in your decisions, that you don't need external validation, that you respect others enough to let them think what they want without trying to control their thoughts, and that you're focused on action rather than justification. Now that you understand these three principles individually, let's explore how they work together to create an unstoppable force of personal power. When you never chase, never beg, and never explain, you operate from what the Stoics called the inner citadel, an unassailable fortress of self-respect and personal sovereignty that no external force can breach. This combination creates what psychologists now call authentic charisma, the ability to attract and influence others through genuine strength rather than manipulation or desperation. People are naturally drawn to individuals who seem complete within themselves, who don't need anything from anyone, and who operate according to their own internal compass rather than external pressures. But here's what makes this approach truly devastating. It forces everyone around you to step up or step out. People who were comfortable with the old you, the one who chased, begged, and explained, may become uncomfortable with the new you. Some relationships will end, and that's not a bug. It's a feature. The people who can't handle your newfound strength were never truly in your corner anyway. The people who remain, and the new people who enter your life, will be operating on a completely different level. They'll respect your boundaries because you have them. They'll value your time because you don't give it away freely. They'll appreciate your attention because you don't shower it on everyone. They'll seek your approval because you don't seek theirs. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always comfortable. You'll be tested constantly. People will try to pull you back into your old patterns of chasing, begging, and explaining because those behaviors were convenient for them. Your former desperation made you controllable, predictable, and useful. Your new strength makes you independent, unpredictable, and valuable. There will be moments when every fiber of your being wants to chase someone who's pulling away, beg someone to reconsider their decision, or explain yourself to someone who's misunderstood your actions. These moments are your tests. They're opportunities to choose strength over weakness, dignity over desperation, and self-respect over external validation. Marcus Aurelius faced these tests constantly. As emperor, he could have demanded love, respect, and understanding from everyone around him. Instead, he focused on being worthy of love and respect without needing to demand it. He could have chased the approval of the Roman people, but instead he focused on being a leader worth following. He could have explained and justified every decision, but instead he let his actions speak for themselves. The Stoic path isn't about becoming cold, uncaring, or antisocial. It's about becoming so secure in your own worth that you can engage with others from a position of strength rather than need. You can love deeply without being desperate for love. You can pursue goals passionately without being attached to outcomes. You can care about people without needing them to care about you in return. When you master these principles, your silence becomes more powerful than most people's speeches. Your presence becomes more influential than most people's desperate actions. Your calm confidence becomes more attractive than most people's frantic efforts to impress. You become someone who commands respect, not through force or manipulation, but through the simple fact that you respect yourself enough to never compromise your dignity. But perhaps the most profound change that occurs when you embrace these principles is the relationship you develop with yourself. When you stop seeking validation from others, you must learn to validate yourself. When you stop depending on others for your emotional state, you must learn to create your own peace. When you stop explaining yourself to others, you must become comfortable with your own judgment. This forced self-reliance creates an unshakable foundation of self-respect and personal power that no external force can disturb. You become your own source of love, respect, validation, and peace. This doesn't make you selfish or narcissistic. It makes you whole. And wholeness is magnetic in a way that neediness never can be. The ancient Stoics understood that the only true security in life comes from within. Relationships end, jobs disappear, health fails, wealth evaporates. But the strength you build through never chasing, never begging, and never explaining remains with you always. It's the one thing that no one can take away from you because it doesn't depend on anyone else. As you begin to implement these principles, remember that this is a practice, not a perfection. There will be setbacks, moments of weakness, and times when you fall back into old patterns. The key is not to judge yourself harshly, but to gently redirect your behavior towards strength. Each time you choose not to chase, not to beg, and not to explain, you're building psychological muscle that will serve you for the rest of your life. Your silence becomes your deadliest weapon not because it hurts others, but because it protects you from the self-inflicted wounds of desperation, neediness, and over-explanation. It becomes deadly to the weak version of yourself that once sought power from others instead of generating it from within. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel ready to reclaim your power and transform your relationships through the strength of your silence, then take action. Like this video if you're committed to never chasing, never begging, and never explaining again. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment your commitment to living by these principles, and most importantly, start practicing them today, because your transformed life is waiting for you to be strong enough to claim it.